everyone, it's Steve Trustrum here from Misfit Studios, and we're going to do this. I'm calling it Misfit Marketing Methods. Okay, this is going live on the Misfit Studios page. If you see me looking over here periodically, it's because I've got both my notes and my Facebook open here on my other monitor, so I'm just keeping an eye open to see if people are showing up, if there's any comments appearing. Otherwise, we're just going to record this with me talking to the camera, and hopefully people will watch it afterwards and get some kind of value out of it, because that would just be nifty if they used it like that. Okay, so let me just check, is there anyone on yet? Any comments? As we're waiting for this, I guess I will just explain a bit about myself, my history, as to why you should care what I have to say. I started doing working in market research companies in the 90s. I started out from the ground up, working on the phones, started managing call centers, then doing data analysis, that sort of thing. Went into qualitative market research, so I would help, using my technical skills, I would help tech companies or companies with technical needs prepare the technical aspects of the project. So I had a background in IT. My education is English and sociology, so I had some work with statistics and a lot of analysis. 2009, I went to work for a company that needed an editor. I was just going in there to edit. Started finding things that were wrong, things that needed to be fixed beyond just the editing of the copy. So started to learn marketing that way. I had a bit of an instinct for it. Going back as far as when I started Misfit Studios in 2003. I don't know if anybody, well, some of you would know this if you've been around on One Bookshelf, RPG Now, and Drive Through, as they used to be called when they were separate. RPG Now used to have a forum which was private just to the publishers there, and I was known as being rather a bit of a loudmouth. And a lot of the things I would talk about and complain about was the lack of marketing features. I had no marketing background. I have no marketing training whatsoever, never taken a class. I have no certification. But I instinctively knew that there were certain things we could be doing better on site to do marketing. So after I started this place as an editor, I started doing marketing and was made content manager, which included overseeing writers and stuff like that, but also figuring out ways to get the content out and get it noticed. So I started taking on stuff with social media, blogging, that sort of stuff. Went back to being a marketing writer, freelance, and doing it for another company called Painted Lemur Studios. And then was hired to my current employer, the Canadian Society of Association Executives, CSAE. It's a not-for-profit organization that's pretty well known up here in Canada. It's been around since the 50s. And what they do is they basically help with education, training, and resource providing, governance issues for other not-for-profits and associations throughout Canada, through all kinds of sectors, manufacturing, financial, charity works, all kinds of stuff like that. Go to the CSAE for help and look to them for guidance. And I was hired there last year as the first content manager they've ever had. So they've been around since the 50s, and I was their first content manager. I was hired to basically get their traffic up where it was. It was dropping off about 30% per month from the previous year. Take hold of their social media, all that stuff. So that's what I've been doing for the past year for them. Have gotten their website up to the point where our audience is growing. Social media is doing by factors of 10 or more better than it was. So even though I have no training, I just hope that'll explain a bit about what I'm capable of, and it means that I've learned on the job. I've learned by doing. I've learned by doing research and practically and experimentation. And I think that's the best thing to do. I don't come in with any of the stuff that you learn in marketing school, which makes, in my experience, it makes people very rigid and not as adaptable. So because I learned by doing, I don't know everything, but I'm able to learn it. And I hope that because that's how I learned, it makes it easier for me to pass it along to anyone else who wants to learn it. So with my boring background out of the way, I think I'll just jump right into something that I know a lot of small business owners and small press publishers, gaming companies have problems with. Most of them are very imaginative people. They're very creative people, but a lot of them don't have any business education, certainly not marketing. And one thing I hear a lot, excuse me, one thing I hear a lot is I love to run my business, I love to do gaming, I love to write, I love to create games, but they hate the marketing aspect of it. And as such, they haven't really put a lot of time into learning it beyond what you can do. You can do a quick Google and look things up, but it takes a lot of detail. It takes a lot of time to do serious marketing. It takes time. So if you're not doing it regularly, and you're learning as you go, or just flying by the seat of your pants, it takes even longer than it would if you go into the process knowing what you're doing. So it's why a lot of people take in this sector take a lot of the quickest route, the simplest route, to just get the marketing done. They do the bare minimum, and that's it. And really, that sells a lot of companies short, because marketing begins with product conception. When you're thinking about what your product's going to be, how it's going to be put together, how it's going to be manufactured, produced, how it's going to go into distribution, and then how it's going to be put out into the market, you should be thinking about marketing all that time. All right. When I create a product, I'm thinking about how it's going to be marketed as it's going. I'm thinking, how is this going to play out? How can I construct this product so that it better appeals to the market? And that goes to everything from setting price points to how big the product's going to be, how it's going to be, how it might be sectioned, how it might turn out to be a component for a larger product down the road. All of that is part of marketing. And a lot of people do this innately as a part of their creative process and don't realize it's marketing. So they kind of dip their toes in the water as far as it makes sense and as far as it is evident to them. And they don't take the necessary full steps to really push through that marketing effort. So I'm going to start by talking about the three pillars, as I call them, the three pillars of any marketing you do for a product, for a service, for anything that you want someone else to buy into, whether it's actual monetization, you want them to pay for it, or you just want them to pay attention to you and accept what you're telling them. There's three things that are the foundation of what any marketing you're going to put together. There are features, benefits, and messaging. I went that way because I didn't want the middle finger up as the last one. So these are the three things that you need to keep in mind. And oddly enough, for CSE, as I said, my day job, I wrote a blog on this today. It was part of my role there. So if you go to csae.com, and then there's a blog in the top menu, there's an article today which is about how associations must keep their association marketing must stay in focus. The title, something like that. And although it's about associations, not for profits, it's covering these three foundation pillars. So they apply to any kind of marketing. The blog itself is just positioned towards associations in that sector, but you can read it and derive the same value for it. Just when you hear associations, just think, small business, small press publishing, gaming company, whatever. Okay, it's all interchangeable. The core of what that is saying is sound, and that goes into far more detail than what I'm going to talk about now. I'm just going to give you a brief synopsis. So, when you're thinking of marketing something, you need to know its features. In terms of games, this is things like, it's the obvious stuff. What's the page count? What's the rule system it's for? What type of supplement is it? Is it a core book? Is it a class book? Is it an adventure? What are the levels are at for? Just things like that. So if you're talking about in terms of a computer, it would be, how big is the screen? What is the refresh rate? How many gigs of RAM? How fast is the processor? How big is the hard drive? These are all features. So a lot of people like to focus on the features because they think this is what sells. You give them a list of what the product is. This is what people are going to buy based on. Wrong. Some people will. People who are very aware, very in tune with what they're looking for, can be sold on just features. If someone's like going and looking for a computer and says, my computer's not running, I can't play these games I want because it doesn't have a big enough processor, it doesn't have enough RAM, it doesn't have a big enough hard drive. They're going to go and look at the features because they want that hard drive, that processor, that RAM. The typical person who goes in and says, I just need a new laptop, isn't necessarily going to be sold on the features. What they're going to do is look at the next step, and that's benefits. And what benefits does is it takes those features and puts them together in a unique positioning, in a unique context. This is where you sell something. So you've got that computer, and you say, Look at the processing power, the RAM, the hard drive. So you look at the processing power of the RAM, you say, able to play top-of-the-line games, streams video seamlessly. That's a benefit. Okay, you've taken those features and you've put it in context that is just common speak. It's, people understand that. It's like, oh, they don't, so somebody doesn't know what RAM is, they don't know what processing speed is. They understand my video is going to be smooth, everything's going to look great. Don't know how much the hard drive is, they don't know how much MP3s are, so you list the hard drive, so you say, it'll hold over 50,000 songs. Hold all of your documents, like something like that. That's a benefit. That's something that someone understands. For screen, say it's a 17-inch screen. A benefit is big enough to watch your movies in crisp clarity, but small enough to fit into your bag and be portable. That is a benefit. Okay. A lot of people think that price is a benefit. It's not, because it exists in a vacuum. If you say it's $99, that's not a benefit. It's not a benefit unless you know how much the person is willing to pay, what the comparative costs are. The benefit is it's an affordable laptop for your average family. That would be a way to phrase price as a benefit. Okay? Now, the thing about this then comes messaging. This is the third pillar. How you present the features and the benefits. This is the part where you take those features and the benefits and you compile it into a story that then goes into your marketing copy. You don't just list the features and say this will sell it, but you also don't just list the benefits and think this will sell it too. You have to put it in a, think back into when you're taking English in school. Everybody thinks of the hamburger paragraph, the opening, the meat, the close, right? That's what your marketing is. You got to start telling a story, hit them with the benefits, and put it into a context that you then close on. That's your messaging. And your messaging is geared around who in your audience, who is your target segment. If your product is geared towards women, the feature and the benefits might not necessarily, well, depending upon the product, some of them obviously will, but depending upon the features and the benefits alone, it might not say this is a product that's geared towards women. That's where your messaging comes in handy. Right? That's where the messaging takes that information and puts it in a format that defines who your market is. And within your market, it's women. Are you going after decision makers? Are you going after the people who are in charge of the money? Are you going after people who are very technical, right? If you're, again, we're selling our computer, or a hypothetical computer, you might think that you're selling to the tech guy, because the tech guy is the one where the boss says, go out and buy that, I need a new computer, go out and buy me one. But what you're not thinking about is that he might not be the one making the final decision. He might be gathering information, and then the decision maker, who knows nothing about computers, is the one who's going to be saying whether to buy that or not. So when you put all those features in front of him, like the gigs of RAM and the hard drive space and the processing speed, it's not going to mean squat to the guy who's making the decision. The benefits, sure, you're getting there because that's common speak. He understands that. But it's the messaging. The messaging frames that in a way that is going after your decision maker. So you would frame that as, does your office need new computers that handle your streaming needs, your file storage needs, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's where you put the messaging in and you target it. So you would change that messaging for a different audience. If you are aiming something at the technical guys, say a technical service, security service, security software, whatever, then you would change the messaging to suit them. Okay, so that's what it means. So when you think about gaming products, who are you shooting for? Are you shooting for the player? Or are you shooting for the game master? Tabletop gamers? Are you shooting for family games? Are you shooting for solo games? Who is it? Is it game night? Is it party games? These are the type of things that take your features, your benefits, and they compile it into a marketing message that goes after who you are aiming at. Now, the reason why messaging is really important beyond the obvious is that if your product doesn't necessarily go after one segment, you've then got to come up with a marketing message that either drills down to all segments, kind of like, I'm not targeting everybody, but I have to kind of hit this minimum threshold that, that's kind of a common denominator, where your message isn't exactly strong, but it's not exactly weak, so you get a broad message. But why not come up with multiple messages for your marketing content? Put it out different marketing messages for different segments. And this is something that you don't see a lot of in the gaming industry, typically because a lot of products are really just, they're so finely focused in their targeting. It's for a game master or it's for players, but what type of players? What type of game masters? Marketing doesn't really go beyond that. Is this for the game masters who just want to throw combat at their players, or is it for the guys who like to, the guys and gals who like to think of puzzles and stuff like that? There is the ability to cut a little bit deeper into the marketing message, but in something like entertainment, you're generally safer with going for that common denominator, because there's such a lot of common ground, especially when you have a niche industry like role-playing games and the like. You tend to be funneled into a very particular focus of shared interest and the like. A lot of players are game masters, a lot of game masters are players, and that sort of thing. So it's a lot safer, but it doesn't mean you don't have to think about it. You should always think about what is the messaging targeting. Okay, so like I said, if you want to learn more about that, I've got some examples and stuff. Go to csae.com and read that blog that I wrote there, and I'll link it in the comments afterwards for anybody who's interested. So after that, we have no questions on here, I believe. Let me just check. Is there anyone here? Or am I talking to myself? Okay, so there's no comments yet. If anybody has any comments, speak up. If you're watching, speak up. Post anything you want me to talk about. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through my list, and I'm not going to do any deep dives into anything. I might do some more of these later where I focus on a specific. So I'm just going to touch on a bunch of stuff. So. One of the things that I really want to get out there, because I see that this is something that really just bothers me because it's such a low-hanging fruit, is for those of you who are RPG publishers and you focus a lot on digital content, PDFs and the like, and you sell through one bookshelf. You sell through Drive-Thru or you sell through RPG Now. Okay, so I've been there since 2003. Your publishing number that, when you go into RPG Now or drivethru.com, whatever, and then it's / the number, that's the number that you registered in. Okay, if your number is 12,001, you are the 12,001st publisher to register an account there. So I'm 101, Misfit Studios, 101. So I've been there since almost the beginning at RPG Now. And back in 2003, right away, I noticed that a lot of storefronts were, and other markets, were putting the footers on the bottom of products. If you're interested in this, you might be interested. If you're interested in this product, you might also be interested in this. So cross-selling, cross-promotion. And there wasn't that option available at the beginning for RPG Now. And this is back before even Drive-Thru was around. It didn't exist yet. And RPG Now is basically the place you went to if you wanted digital RPG content. So what I did is I created an iframe. I would put an iframe in all of my product content, and then I would host footers that I made myself on the Misfit Studios website in a folder. Now, you couldn't reach this folder from anywhere else on the website. There was nothing linked to it. Its sole function was to put these bare folders, or these bare files, onto my server that would be pulled through this iframe over at RPG Now. And what they did is created the footers. If you go to any Misfit Studios product now, you'll see there's footers at the bottom. The whole, if you're interested in this, click here, click here. So I used to fake that before RPG Now added it. And then took it off when I saw that they had, it was easy to use and they had it all integrated into their own dashboard. I switched off and, took all those iframes out because there's a lot of coding on my part. But what boggles my mind now is that I figured that out in 2003. And that was before I'd had any marketing experience at all. I hadn't done any professional marketing yet, but these are what I'm saying, when things were kind of clicked for me in marketing. That's why I'm doing it professionally now. And so when I look at publishers on RPG Now, I see that so few of them have footers. They don't have footers in their product. Look at the largest online, one of the largest, if not the largest, one of the largest online retailers in the world, Amazon. Everything has a footer. You come in, there's different strips of products. You were here last time, you looked at these 3 different kinds of products. So here's a bunch of products from these 3 different categories you looked at. Are you looking at this book? Here's a bunch of other books you want to. They're constantly throwing product at you that's related through a hierarchy of categorization. There's a dichotomy in behind their content management system that integrates all these products together. So if you look at one, it goes and pulls all these other things based on a series of logic gates and the like, what they're going to show you. Now, RPG Now isn't that detailed in its footers. You basically say, here's what I want in this footer, and you assign it to products. It's not intuitive at all. It doesn't adapt. It's based entirely on what you present to it. But at least it's there, and like nobody is using it. I would bet on RPG Now drive-through, Misfit Studios is the most prolific user of footers out of any publisher there. I've never seen anybody who uses it often as I do, or to the extent I do. And some don't use it at all. Most don't use it at all. And it's ridiculous. It's a low-hanging fruit. Go, if you're a publisher at RPG Now, go set up your footers. You know what? If you have trouble with it, drop me an email. Drop me a direct message to Facebook or something. Say, Steve, how do I do this? I even sell, Misfit Studios sells a footer code really cheap, where you just take this and it has, I think it's like $5. It gives you the code that'll create a footer for you. It tells you how to put your products into it. It's step-by-step instructions. Some people have, it's gotten pretty good reviews, because a lot of the people I see who are using footers now are actually customers who have bought it. And they've taken the time to say, yeah, this is great. And what happens on RPG Now is that you can add a code to the end of a product to tell you where it's coming from. So when I have a footer on, say, my stock art, I would call that OBS stock art. So if I make a sale there, because somebody clicked on that footer, I can then go into my records on RPG Now and see that that's where that sale came from. And I make a lot of sales off my footers. Someone's looking at one thing, and again, going to my stock art and say, oh, you know what, now that I look at that product, it's not what I want. But then underneath that, there's every other piece of stock art that I sell as a little thumbnail that they click on, and it takes them to that product. And because people are sitting there going, oh, I like this, what else do they have? Or I don't like it, oh, but look at all this other stuff. They look, they click, they buy. Now, if you're not using these footers, they look at your product, they either buy that or they don't, and then now they do have on RPG Now a limited thing like, also bought. It appears there. But like I said, you have no control over that. So also bought is not guaranteed to be your products. It's going to be some other publisher where a lot of people have just bought that product at the same time as yours. When you add your footers, you control exactly what's being presented there. It's only your product, or if you have deals with somebody else, you can put their product in, whatever. So if you're on RPG Now and you're not using the footer function, you can find it on the left of the dashboard when you're under the publishing tab. It's there. If you're on RPG Now and you're not using it, doesn't matter if you're a small press, you're a big company, you're a big name, you're a well-known name, you're a nobody, start using the footer. Take the time. It'll make you money. And it may seem like a little bit if you look at it in any 1 month, but it adds up by the end of the year. Okay, I've made thousands of dollars per year based solely on those footers that I wouldn't have made if people couldn't really navigate between my products that easily. So that's a bit of marketing advice. If you're not at RPG Now, you're at another storefront, you're not in role-playing games, you're in some other business, you're in tabletop games. If there is that feature there, make use of it. You can't value cross-promotion capabilities enough. It is a golden opportunity. If you're selling at storefronts that don't offer footers, start hammering the people who run that storefront to start offering them. The competitive edge that it offers is fantastic, and it's a win-win for the storefront as well, because if more people are getting access to your product through your footers and buying more stuff, then they get a larger piece of that action. So it only works to their benefit. Push them to make footers. It's an easy, low-hanging fruit way to market, and if you're not using it, you should be. Okay, so I should also mention anything I'm talking about with marketing. I'm going to mention there's a problem for international marketing that you don't run into in Canada and the U.S. And this goes back to the features, benefits, and messaging that I mentioned earlier. When you're creating your messaging, if you are selling to a lot of countries overseas, and by overseas I mean not Canada and the U.S., you're not aware of their trade laws, you have to be very careful, because there's a lot of European countries, and I can't remember exactly how it works based on the European Union, because I think that because there is the European Union now, all members have to adhere to this. I could be wrong, but I know a lot of them do have this law in effect, that what you put in your messaging for your product is taken as a contract. It's a promise. So if you say in your marketing, this product will give you the best gaming night of your life, and you sell that in a European market, as absurd as it seems, if someone can take you to court and prove that, no, your product did not give them the best gaming night of their life, you have failed on a promise that they say made them purchase that product in the first place. And you'll lose. You can get sued for damages. You can get sued in a civil suit because you made a promise in your marketing in that market and you couldn't follow up on it. So when you're making marketing content, it may seem silly because, there's a lot of hyperbole in marketing, like this is the best beer ever. You don't really run into that in European markets, because in these particular European markets, because you can get held to that standard that you're presenting. You can't just throw things out there. So keep that in mind. I'm not sure exactly how on the hook you are if you're selling through RPG Now. It's an international or Amazon, whatever, because it's an international storefront because it's online sales, but it's locally based. But if you're a publisher in the UK or whatever, watch your ass when it comes to these sort of laws. You really have to be careful with what you say. Stay away from the hyperbole. Words like can and may and possibly are very, very good friends when you're putting together your marketing content. In general, they're very good friends. You tend to stay away from things like will or definitely or certainly or absolutely. Stay away from promising things in marketing content. It may look good, but unless you've got a nice budget to cover your butt legally, just stay away from the hyperbole and just go common sense and sell the product based on its merits and not by talking it up too much. Okay, let's see. I am going to talk about let's talk a little bit about blogging, because I know that one of the artists that work with me, and he's probably a name that you guys will recognize if you're in the RPG industry, Eric Lofgren, asked about blogging because he was saying he wanted to do a blog. And so I said that I would talk about it a bit and how that relates to marketing. So again, just a high pass here. We're not going to delve too deeply. If you want to know more, maybe I'll do another one of these specifically on blogging. So when you blog commercially as a marketing tool, you're not just sitting there using advice, you're doing reviews or whatever. If you're a company and you blog and you want to monetize it, you want it as a channel that's going to turn into money. You don't just sit there and say, here's my great product coming out. Here's my great product. You want to talk about this is my upcoming schedule, yada, yada, yada. You want to delve in that. But you also want to do what's called using topic-driven content. You want to present a blog that is talking about a topic that is related to your product, that's in the area, but it is not your product. Okay? So, taking Eric Lofgren, for example. Eric is a fantastic artist. I've sold stock art on his behalf for 3, maybe going on 4 years now. And it sells very well because people know Eric, and he's a quality artist. They knew him well before, it's not like I made him. I'm not saying that. He was well made before I ever started selling for him. He's done a lot of art. You probably recognize it in your game books, even if you don't know it's him. He's been in a lot of publishers' products. But he's saying he wants to do a blog, and he would not just have a blog, obviously, that's just, here's my latest painting, or here's my latest art. It took me 12 hours. I used this kind of brush. That's boring. So what he would do maybe is talk about art techniques. Say, I've been experimenting with speed painting lately. I set myself a time, an hour to do a project, and, maybe I open it up to the blog. Who's going to vote for my next speed painting? Leave it in the comments what I should do. And then he does a speed painting, and next week he posts it on the blog and says this is how long it took him, and this is what he did, and this is what inspiration was. He talks about it. Okay, or maybe he talks about his favorite type of characters to paint, how he got started in commissions. He talks about a topic that is not the product specifically. And at the bottom, you have a call to action. And that is one of these things, it's like, if you liked what you just read here, you might be interested in this product, bam. So for my company, Misfit Studios, I do a lot of superhero products. I'm one of the most prolific, although I haven't done it in a while. Probably got one of the widest ranges of Mutants and Masterminds second and third edition products available in the market. I've certainly got the biggest ones with the biggest third-party rule supplements with Better Mousetrap and MetaHuman Martial Arts. Both of them are like 300 pages or more. So I've got a lot out for that market, but if I'm blogging about it, I'm not going to be, here's my blog about MetaHuman Martial Arts, here's my blog about Better Mousetrap, here's how great they are, here's what's in it. No one's going to want to read that blog. It's basically a product description. What the hell? Like, that's not a blog. What I would write about is, say, how to make interesting villains with 1 hour before your game time. How to conceive a better death trap to throw against your heroes. Okay, those are the type of things that game masters want to read about. Like, really, it's an hour before game time, I don't have a villain, what am I going to throw together? Or, I'm tired of, like, here's the sharks with freaking laser beams on their head in a tank. Okay, they're tired of that. They want something new. So they read the blog and go, this is interesting. And then at the bottom, I would say something like, if you found this blog about, building a better villain or building a better death trap interesting, well, Better Mousetrap by Misfit Studios, as written by me, presents a lot of information on how to run villains. It provides a lot of information on new villain options for the rules, as well as death traps. Why don't you check it out? Here's how you buy it. So the topic-driven content, which is really important for a successful blog, if you want to monetize it, takes that topic, goes through, and it's something that someone could read even if they never purchased from you. They're getting value out of the topic alone. Okay? And it's not going boom, it's not hitting that product head on. It's not like a straight line straight to the product. What it is, it's kind of coming at the product sideways. You're interested, and then boom, there's your product placement. Okay? That's topic-driven content, and that's basically what I spend my day doing. Is in CSAE, where I work for associations, is I say, this is what associations need to know about cybersecurity. This is what associations need to know about building more engaging events. I provide information that these people want to know, they're going to get value out of. They're going to walk away and say, well, that was helpful, that was informative. And then I put a call to action on saying, well, if you're interested in this, maybe you want to go to this CSAE event or look at our bookstore. We have a book that tackles this subject more in depth, something like that. They may never go buy that book. They may never go to that event. But if they sit there and go, this was informative, I should come back and see what he's going to say next time he blogs, then the blog has succeeded because it's created an audience. And I may not sell to him this time, but I may sell to that person next time, or the next time, or the next time, so long as my topic-driven content keeps them coming back. And I may never sell to that person, but they may share my blog. They may post it on Facebook. They may talk about it in the office and say, hey, here's this thing I read. Topic-driven content in a blog is how you sell if you are a business using your blog that way. If you're just using it to put products in, it's not going to work. Those days are over. That's how Misfit Studios ran its blog years ago, before this topic-driven content had really sorted itself out and everything. Of course, it always would have worked, but it wasn't really as important a sales technique at that time. And now, to be honest, I'm so busy. Misfit Studios is a side business for me, so I don't have a lot of time to blog there. Seeing as how my day job is blogging as well as social media management, I don't have time to run the additional blog. So Misfit Studios blog, as it stands, hasn't had anything posted in it for a long time, and that's because, as I'm saying, I need topic-driven content. I don't want to just post products up there. You'll find products posted in there. That's fine if you do that, but just as long as that's not considered your once-a-week blog post or whatever. And that is important, by the way. Set a schedule, at least once a week for a blog if you want to monetize it. I would do 2 if you can. Daily is really ambitious. Unless you've got a lot of time, you're not going to make a daily blog. So I would say aim for once or twice a week and stick to that schedule. Stick to it. And you do it by nibbling at your blog a little bit every day. Write when you can. Just do it. Boom, boom, boom. I actually have a template. Whenever I do blog writing, I have a template that has I write in HTML, so I can just drop it right into whatever content management system I'm using. Misfit Studios runs on WordPress, and so I can envision how it works as I'm writing, and I don't have to worry about WordPress screwing things up when it does the auto coding when you put it into the WYSIWYG. So work on that. Streamline your blog process, but topic-driven content is the way to go. Don't just start posting product placements. It's not going to work. People are going to lose interest. They're not going to keep coming around. And it may seem like that's difficult to do. So what I would do is create a list of topics. Just brainstorm topics. Write them down, no matter how ridiculous they are. Brainstorm them. Keep it somewhere, and then keep going back to it. Even the things that you consider ridiculous, you might come back later and go, well, that's not really going to work as is, but it sends me off in another direction because I saw this other thing the other day that was kind of like that. It tells me what I want to do. So everything that doesn't work, every mistake is an opportunity in another direction when it comes to marketing, if you keep your eyes and your ears open for it. So that's blogging. If you are blogging, I would also suggest learning a little bit about SEO. So I guess we'll just talk about that. SEO is search engine optimization. It's creating marketing content that is more likely to get noticed by Google and rank higher. This is very important for small businesses and for small press publishers. Not enough people do it, so this is why your stuff doesn't show up on Google a lot unless, especially if you're in a competitive market. If you're a Pathfinder publisher, you're not going to show up under Pathfinder. It's just when somebody types in Pathfinder, the chances of you showing up are very small. What's going to happen is Pathfinder's publisher, their product is going to show up because they use the name the most often. It's their brand. They've got the most momentum with it. They've got the most power and authority so far as Google is concerned. So and of course I've seen some people say, well, my search engine optimization is the tits because, you type this name into Google, my product shows up first. And what they forget to tell you is that, of course they show up first. They're using a unique name. If I make a setting book and call it Wigadaboo, and that's the name of my setting, Wigadaboo for Pathfinder, and you're like, look how good I rank. Let's type in Wigadaboo, number one. You know why you're number one? Because nobody else has anything else out that's using Wigadaboo. All right, there's no competition, so you're number one. Doesn't mean you've successfully done SEO. It means there's no one out there doing it, and that if there's no one out there doing it, then no one is out there searching for that, and you failed. So what search engine optimization is about when it comes to keywords is finding the keywords that represent your product, are going to be searched for by your market, and you use those to get it so that you show up on the first page of a Google search for that. So if you did, say, Fighter and Pathfinder together, you're going to get all kinds of hits. You're going to get the online SRDs. You're going to get forum posts. You're going to get products. It's such a large and broad category that you're going to get everything under the sun, and you're not going to be able to compete against it. So don't even try something like Fighter, Pathfinder as your keywords. And those are what's called short tail keywords. 1 or 2 word keyword phrases are short tail. They're really hard to compete with because, as you can see, Fighter and Pathfinder, there's no real context there. So Google is it's like throwing your net as wide as possible, right? The problem when you throw your net as wide as possible is it catches so many fish that if you're just one fish on being caught in that net, you're not going to get noticed. So you want to use keyword phrases, and if you have an analytics account, if you have a Google account, create an Adwords account. Even if you never run AdWords, create an AdWords account for the sole purpose of gaining access to AdWords Keyword Planner. It's the keyword planner that's tied into Google Analytics, it's tied into their algorithm, it's turned into their search engine. So if Google is the search engine you're aiming at, and why would you not? It's the one that's primary in most world markets. You want to use the keyword planner to find it, to find these keywords, how viable they are. So you say, this is a great keyword. You type it in. It tells you how competitive it is, how many searches per month are done on it, some other keywords that are like it, some keyword phrases that are like it. And you want to get keyword phrases, like I said, long tail. So they're 3 words or more. And this doesn't include stop words. Things like in, at, the, of, are, or. Words that bridge parts of your sentence. Okay, disregard those. Google does. Google doesn't take them into account. So don't say that's my third word. It's got an of. Okay. So a good, say, for a fighter book for Pathfinder, a good long-term keyword might be fighter style companion book Pathfinder. Okay, that seems pretty specific. Now, if you put in fighter and Pathfinder, you might say this has from 50,000 to 100,000 searches a month. Your one product is going to be lost in that 50,000 to 100,000 searches a month. It's not going to show up. Now you do this fighter style blah 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 for Pathfinder keyword, the one that's like 5 or 6 words, and I just made it off the top of my head, so I can't even recall what it was right now. But you rewind the tape, you know what I'm talking about. If you put that in, it might say, hey, do you know what? There's 500 to 1,000 searches on this month, and you'd be like, 500 to 1,000, that kind of sucks. But the thing is, there's so little competition for that compared to Fighter Pathfinder. Your chance of ranking on it is higher. And because it's so specific, those 500 to 1,000 searches are kind of, they're filtered out the stuff that's least likely to be the people you want. Because they're searching for that thing that is more tightly aligned with the context of your product. So there's a bigger chance of them wanting that product, if you see what I mean. If you find something that's like there's no results, or it's like 10 results a month, then you're cutting that line a little too thin. So you want something that's up to like 1,000 or 10,000 or something like that. That's an okay range. So don't think that just because there's few search results that it's worthless to you. And you can also do more than one keyword phrase within a single marketing content in a blog or a product description that's going online, something like that. So, just do the research. And again, if people are interested in learning about SEO, maybe I'll do another one of these. But this is the primer to it. This is the starter. This is how SEO works. Figure out your keyword. Do your keyword research to see if it works. Find out if there's something better, because you might say, there's something that's, when it tells you these are similar to your keyword that you entered, you might go, oh, that's better. Then go with that, or go with them both. Then what you do is you put it into your online copy. And there's certain things that Google looks at when it looks at your online copy. So this is product descriptions, this is your blog entry, this is your landing pages on your website where you're mentioning your gaming products. So here are, just really quickly, here's the things where you want your keywords to appear. You want it in your H1 tag. And you only want one H1 tag per page. There are ways around this with the new versions of HTML coming out, but they haven't really rolled out extensively. Not a lot of people are using them yet. The article tags and the like. So for general rule, one H1 per page on your website. Then you also want it in your H2 and your H3. So you should have at least one H1 will be your main title. H2, you can use it as a subtitle. And H3, I use those as separating titles as you go down the blog. If you look at just about any blog that I've written in the last couple of years where I've really put a focus on SEO, you'll see that they all have these subtitles in. So those are important things for SEO. And you want the keywords in your primary keywords, you want them in those places. Then you want it in the first paragraph of text, as close to the first sentence as possible and as close to the beginning of the first sentence as possible. You also want to put it in bold, but don't use the B for bold in HTML. Use strong. Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but if I do something on SEO, I'll explain that later. But when you're creating online content in HTML, use strong. Don't use the B for bold. Just like use EM for emphasis instead of I for italics. Trust me on this. So you want your keywords in bold at least once. You also want them in a hyperlink at least once. So if you're writing a blog about a product, or a blog where it's topic driven and it's leading towards a product, you might do an aside going, fighters look for this, blah, 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 blah. Parenthesis, as seen in our Fighter Pathfinder product, and you link to it on your storefront, wherever you're selling it, and you use your keywords in that link to that product. So not only are you giving a link to your product, but because you've included those keywords in the link, you're getting SEO value out of it. And then you want it in the last paragraph as well, and this time preferably the last sentence as close to the last word as possible. And you also want it, saturation level, you want it anywhere from 2 to 6% of your overall content to be the keyword phrase. It varies. Like Google keeps its algorithm really tightly under wraps, so there's no one who knows for sure what that percentage is. But because people have, there's people who do this professionally, they put content out and they measure results based on how much the saturation those keywords are in the content. Then 2 to 6% is the safe range that I go with. Okay, so you also the reason why you have this is because Google's going to look at the keyword appearing in all these places and in all these formats and say, okay, these use it in all of the heading tags. It's right at the front. It's one of the first things he talks about. It's bolded. It's in a hyperlink, and it's one of the last things he talks about as you're leaving his blog. These keywords, they are probably really important to what's being talked about here. So they're given relevancy. And then Google starts using that relevancy based on traffic comes into your website on that page, and it starts to build authority and gives it juice, is the common term. If it's basically if someone else is coming from your page to their page or whatever, the juice is the passing of what I call search engine momentum, the authority. You're being seen as an authority on what those keywords are talking about. So when people come in or they link to it, it starts to pass juice, which is, that authority coming from them. They recognize you. This other website recognizes you as an authority on this, so if they link to it, that also boosts your SEO. So you want to get people to mention your blog and link to it and share it and all that, because the more that happens, yes, Google recognizes those links, and it starts to increase your value. Especially the more changes they make to their algorithm, the more important these links are. And some of the low-hanging links are link to other storefronts where you're selling your product. So again, if I sell on RPG Now, I sell on Paizo, I sell on E23 Warehouse, all those links to that product, if I on my landing page where I mention the product, I have it on my website. Misfit Studios says, here's the product, here's where I'm selling it. All those links are passing authority. So it's not just easy and convenient for someone to come and click on it and go to the product. It has the benefit of SEO as well. If you're using WordPress, I would suggest installing Yoast's SEO plugin, WOAST, because it's got a Christmas tree as part of it. So these things I've been talking about, putting your keywords into the different tags, as you fulfill that criteria, it turns your Christmas tree to green. It says, yes, you've got an H1, you've got an H2, you've met the percentage limit or the percentage requirement. So it starts going from red to green. So you can actually, if you know nothing about SEO, if you learn about keywords and you start getting the hang of choosing good keywords, something like Yoast in WordPress will help you use those keywords properly, because it's literally a checklist where it examines your content as you go and tells you if you're doing it right and if you're meeting the criteria for good SEO. So go ahead with that. What else? Oh yes, you also want the keywords in the meta description. And if you're doing it on a blog, if you have the option, never have a blog one page that just scrolls. Don't do that. Because remember I said the whole, only have one H1 tag, make sure your content is 2 to 6% of the word on the amount of words on the screen. Well, think about it. How are you ever going to get that 2 to 6% if all you've got is a page of just scrolling words? Your keyword density is going to become non-existent because you just keep adding more words and adding more words, and you've got multiple H1s. So the best way to run a blog, if you want to monetize it, is you have a master page which lists maybe the banner and the title and an excerpt. And basically you click on the banner or the title and it takes you into the blog, and the blog's on its own page. Now if you do this, make sure you use custom excerpts, okay? Because another part of SEO is using original content. Every time you use content that appears somewhere else on another website, you get dinged for it if it's enough. Now, the rule of thumb I go for is you have to have at least 80% original content on a website. Or, sorry, on an individual page on a website. If you've got more than 20% that shows up as duplicate content, Google's going to think, well, you're copying a lot of stuff from somewhere else, so maybe you're not the authority you think you are, because you got to take all this stuff from other places. So maybe you're not the authority, and we'll just maybe not push you as high on the search results as we should. So yeah, keep your duplicate content to under 20%. A good way to do that is I use Grammarly. It's under $200 for a year, and it'll check all of your content for you before you put it up. Write it in Word. Don't write live on your blog. Write it in Word first. Run it through spell check and all that stuff, and then copy and paste it onto your blog. So yeah, write an original excerpt for that master page on your blog, and say, so if your blog is talking about, say, go back to Eric Lofgren, and because you're going to be blogging soon, Eric, then you would write about, here's my speed painting technique. If you don't set it to original excerpt, you don't put original excerpt in, what it usually does is it takes like the first 200 words of your blog from the first paragraph, and it posts that on that master page under the banner and the name. So if it's doing that, you're getting duplicate content on your own page. Those 200 or whatever words that appear in your blog also appear somewhere else. So that blog is no longer original. So do not use an automatic excerpt. Instead, where it says, write your excerpt, write something original. Write something that summarizes what the blog is about, and put your keywords in that as well. So I would, for Eric's excerpt, on the front, I would say, read on to see Eric describe his, speed painting method when, Bob Smith last week challenged him to paint an elf in a forest. That would be what I would put there. It describes what the blog is about in an original way, but it's also, the description in and of itself is to push the person to go read the blog. Whereas if you're excerpting the first 200 words, that's not necessarily going to happen. The context is that you're already there reading the blog, so it's not necessarily written to pull someone from one page to the next, and it's also going to cut off. So it's going to go blah 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 blah, and then dead mid-sentence, right? And then say click here, read more, and send you in. So it's not only that it's bad for SEO, but it's not an effective way to incite people to go read your blog. Another thing, going back to the 2 to 6%, if you go under it, then Google will say you've put it in all these places, but you don't really mention it much outside of that, so I don't know if this is really what you're talking about, so you won't rank as high. And if you go over that 6%, then and it shifts. Like some people say 8%, some people say 10%. So do your research and go with the percentage you want. Me personally, I operate with 2 to 6%. If you go over that 6%, what's going to happen is that you might be dinged for what's called keyword stuffing. Now, anybody who remembers, there was a lot of, like in the 90s and early 2000s, when people wanted things to get noticed, there was the meta keywords. I mentioned meta description earlier, and now we're talking meta keywords. And they would just stuff everything in there. Like, people are looking for this. This is something that a lot of people search for. So I'm just going to throw that word into my meta keyword. And, and then when people started, like the actual content started being used, and SEO started out, people would just stuff those words into the content as much as possible just to get their stuff looked at. So stuff read like crap. One of the things is in the 90s, everybody put the words sex and porno and naked in their meta keywords because they're some of the most heavily searched terms. So it increased the chance of people finding your page. And then they would try and find ways to put it into their content because it's the most heavily searched terms. And then they would just keep saying things again. So with our Fighter Pathfinder, you're stuffing keywords if you're saying, in my Fighter Pathfinder book, I think that fighters for Pathfinder are great, and no other Fighter for Pathfinder book will help you play a Fighter for Pathfinder as well as my Fighter for Pathfinder supplement. Oh, great, you're going to make your 2 to 6%, but you're stuffing. And Google now is very good at reading this stuff, and will ding you for it. They'll say, you're just making this to get traffic, you're not really offering anything of value that's topic-driven, so we're going to downgrade you. So you want it to read naturally, fluidly, but you want to have those keywords in there too. Don't stuff them. Like, there used to be things called keyword farms, and that's all they were. They were just web pages with keywords just put on there, just stuffed in there, and then they'd have ads. So the keywords would just pull people there, and they would just try selling them stuff. You can't do that with Google anymore. And because of how Google fought against keyword farms, that's why you have to be careful with how you use your keywords now, and don't go over that 6% if you can help it. If you find yourself going over that, then maybe dilute it a bit by adding a little bit more content, making your blog maybe 100 words longer or so, just to keep it down. If you find that you're under, maybe see where you can trim some fat, cut out the verboseness and just trim it a bit to get that percentage up. And like I said, you can have more than one keyword phrase in a single blog or a single landing page, whatever. But don't try and get everyone into every one of those benchmarks I gave you. Like, if you've got 3 sets of keywords you're using, don't put all 3 in every H1, every H2, and every H3, or try and get them all in the first sentence. Choose a primary set of keywords that really speaks to your product. Hit all the benchmarks with that, and then try and do as good as you can with the other ones. Okay, and that'll be kind of like some extra weight to your search engine results. So maybe I'll go into more SEO in another one. So that covers the basics of blogging. I don't know how long I've been talking. Oh, it's been almost an hour. So you know what? I'm actually think I'm going to wrap this up now. I've given some general advice here. It suits basically any type of business for marketing, blogging, for example. But I hope that it's really been focused on, if you're a small press publisher or you're a game publisher, I hope that you've really found this useful for what you're doing. I didn't see any questions pop up while I was doing this, so I just kind of went off in my own direction. But I've got lots of notes here just in case some stuff came up. So I can do more of these if anybody wants to. So I'm going to end recording in a second, and then I'm going to post this up on YouTube and the like. And I welcome people to share it, send it to people, to groups on social media, blogs and the like, who might draw value from it, or who, if you want to see more from me, post comments, ask questions, post them on my Facebook. I'm going to put this up on YouTube, so post your questions and comments on YouTube. I'd really like to see what people are interested in learning more about. Otherwise, I don't know if I'm just going to be sitting here talking to a camera and nobody. So please share this, respond, give me some feedback, and if you want to see me dive deeper into any of the stuff I've talked about tonight, I can do that in separate broadcasts. Otherwise, I'm going to just tackle some new topics that, in my opinion, I see there's a lot of help that small press and gaming publishers need in those particular areas for marketing. So that's enough rambling for me. That is the first episode of Misfit Marketing Methods, and I hope everybody got some value out of it, and have yourselves a good night until possibly next time.